एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता उच्यता पवनचलनरूपा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं मृण्मयि जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तद्भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः ओहं भावतः कुतो य दृष्टा मनिष्ठा स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been meditating on the verses of Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram, and we have been relying on the Tamil translation of Bhagavan for the porul, for the meaning. And we have come to that shlokam, which is the penultimate, the last but one, and which forms the last of the discussions on Ishvara, the light that reveals everything. And this is a shloka that many of the traditional Jnanamargi commentators and speakers have some difficulty with, feeling that it is Sri Dakshinamurti Ashtakam and the Upadesha is completed in the first 8 shlokas itself, and the 9th one is not part of the Upadesha. But then, as we can understand very easily, that Bhakti and Jnana are not two different things. Bhakti and jnana are only awareness described differently. Just as Bhagavan says to someone who asks him, is the Shivanama greater, the Gayatri Mantra greater, or Omkara greater? Along these lines, he asks the question, and Bhagavan says they are all of equal strength. They are all of equal omnipotence. But you will have to seek, you will have to choose, you will have to love one of them. You will have to take one of them for the worship. Because that is what appeals to you most. Similarly, just as Shiva, Gayatri Japam, Omkara are all only the one power. Similarly, Bhakti and Jnana are essentially rooted in love and awareness. It is not even love and awareness. It is understanding of both. It is loving of both. If you say understanding is jnana and if you say loving is bhakti, then without love for both modes of awareness as the same, if you differentiate in your love as to what is bhakti and what is jnana, or if you differentiate as two different understandings, bhakti and jnana, we cannot complete the journey. And this verse can be seen as part of the 3 verses on Ishvara itself. In the description of the light that reveals everything, Bhagavan, as usual, begins with the ultimate. That light which reveals everything is that which permeates everything. Is the Vishnu, is the one that permeates all known and unknown and all the other avasthas that is possible. Balyadishvapi jagradadishu tata sarvasvavastasvapi vyavrittas vanu vartamana ahamityantaspurantam sada. So there, in the first of the 3 verses on Ishvara, Ishvara is pointed out by the Guru, who is himself the Ishvara, that view the Ishvara as that which permeates all the avasthas. Therefore, Nikamara Niraindirupol. He is the one who permeates everything. In the second verse, to those who cannot understand that which permeates everything, the spirit that permeates everything, the Acharya comes to relationship. That Vishwam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandhatah Shishyacharya Tataiva Pitrupitradhyatmana Vedatah. So here the Acharya points out that Dakshinamurthy Swami is that awareness which connects, which brings about or sees the world as nothing but the relationships. And it is not that it is divided as the connector and the connected, but that light which connects everything is itself the Sarvavyapi. But the student is given the so-called lineage or the linear view that you see some objects. I am not asking you to leave the entire set of objects and consider only the spirit that permeates all of them. Okay, you see some objects, but focus on that which brings about the relationship and take that consciousness as all permeating, as the Sarvavyapi. Now comes the next verse where the student expresses this inability that the objects are really strong in themselves, that he is not able to see the importance of even the relationships. He is not able to see that the one spirit permeates all the avasthas, in which case he has to go totally with that awareness alone. In the second verse, some degree of objectification, looking at the objects and inquire as to what is it that connects, who is it that connects, and understand that the one who connects everything is the one who permeates everything, and that is the Dakshinamurthy Swami, the Atma Swarupa. Here, the Acharya is addressing that student who doesn't want to look at even that which connects, but he says the objects are so overpowering. I see these huge galaxies, I see these huge powerful people, I see these huge countries, these huge powers all along, and I am always seeing them as completely overpowering me. Everything is bigger than me. I am so small still. You are asking me to be the sensitive one, to permeate everything, to see that I am the one bringing about the relationship, but I am not, Swami. I still see things, the objects, to be great and great powers to which I am subject. To such a one, still using jnana, still without living jnana, because he is going to say vidyate, you will have to see it like this. So the jnanam, unlike the many commentators feel, the jnanam has not been left. It is still kept. But now the bridge to jnanam and bhakti, if you can call that, or bhakti and jnanam, is brought about by the Acharya, who we all know has written this shloka itself as a stuti, and he has written the margas, the bhakti margas, all the 6 modes of worship he has written. So the jnana marga does not throw away the path of bhakti, which is a mode of awareness. K. Swaminathan says, Professor K. Swaminathan sir says, while giving the commentary on the centenary presentation in All India Radio, he says that Bhagavan teaches both the modes of awareness, jnana and bhakti, and that there is no conflict between the two, the so-called two. But in this verse, the focus is going to be on the objects completely. That we are going to deal with a sadhaka, that is ourselves, who is totally feeling that the objects are all so many and they all combine to be of such great power that I feel my consciousness, my awareness is not able to do anything to them but feel subservient, but feel overpowered. To such a one, the Acharya comes in help and gives a great blessing. That is, he says, the shloka goes like this: Bhurambamsya nalo nilom bharam aharnato himamshu puman ityabat characharatmakamidam yasyaiva murtyashtakam na anyat kinchana vidyate vimrishata yasmat parasmat vibhoho tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Namaidam Sri Dakshinamurtaye. We are not able to begin with the consciousness. I am so overpowered by the objects. What am I to do? Asks the Sishya. And the Acharya says, Manpunal Analkal Vanam Madikadir Onpu Manum Endrolir Characharam Ser Idu Evan Yettu Murtam Enduvark Irei Niraindon Evaninan Anniyam Satrindra Tandarul Guruamanda Dakshinamurthy Potri. Bhagavan's shloka in Upadesha Saram comes to our aid. Bhagavan begins the Bhakti Marga by in the Upadesha Saram Karturadaya Prapyate Palam Karma Kimparam Karma Tanchadam Kriti Mahodadau Patanakaranam Falamashashvatam Gati Nirodakam Ishwararpitam Nechaya Kritam Chittashodakam Mukti Sadakam Kaya Vang Manaha Karya Muktamam Pujanam Japa Chintanam Krama. All the work, all the physical body perception related sadhana that you do, consider them as puja. And he is going to begin with that. That Kaya Vangmana Karya Muktamam Pujanam Japaschintanam Krama. Then comes the verse that is parallel to this verse so far as the beginning is concerned. Jagata Ishadhi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Brith Deva Pujanam. The best form of worship. The best form of worship because this is going to be continuous worship. In the earlier verse, while discussing Upadesha Saram, Kaya Vangmana Karyamtamam Pujanam Japa Stindanam Krama, while discussing that, one of the ways in which that verse can be looked. Earlier, Bhagavan would have said that Karturagnya Prapyate Palam. It is by the Ishvara's Agnya that karma bears fruit. Karma Kimparam. When the karmi, the person who is doing the work himself is not having Swayam Chitta. He is going as Jada in deep sleep. Well, that fellow himself is Jadam. How can what he does have Chaitanyam? Chaitanyam enough to assure us of result. So, Karmata Jadam. If we don't understand this, that we ourselves have derived as a jiva, we ourselves have derived chit. And the karma we do obviously has derived chit. It does not have Chaitanyam of its own. If we don't realize this, Kriti Mahodad, we will be pushed into the ocean of karma. Then what is the way out? Bhagavan says to the Upadesham given to Dharukavana rishis, he says, Ishwararpitam ne ichchaya kritam chittashodakam mukti sadakam. What the sporadic works you do without any ichcha for results, as well as do those works as arpana, as offering to Ishvara. And how is the best offering possible to Ishvara? Bhagavan gives a clue how to come from the karma to Ishvara Arpita karma. Bhagavan gives a clue through Kunjaswami. He says both of them are seated at around 4:30 or 5 early morning in the kitchen. They are cutting vegetables for the day. Bhagavan is also cutting vegetables, I presume. Kunjaswami, of course, is cutting vegetables. And Kunjaswami espies the clock. He looks up at the clock and Bhagavan sees that. He asks Kunjaswami, why are you looking at the clock? And Kunjaswami says, how nice it would have been if I had been in meditation hall now and doing self-enquiry, doing the holding of the all-permeating sarvasva vastasvapi, the balyadishu sarvasva vastasvapi, there is one Atma I could have held it directly in Atma Vicharam. Instead of that, I am cutting vegetables. And Bhagavan laughingly says, you would have gone there and thought Bhagavan is sitting there alone cutting vegetables. I should have remained there. Therefore, when Saguna Upasana has been given, that the vegetables are the form of Ishvara, and you have the opportunity to hold that and give all your attention to that in the Saguna Upasana, to not think of self-enquiry also right now is the way of meditating or coming to the Ishvara Swarupa as Atma, says Bhagavan. That is, when you are doing one work, not to think even of self-enquiry is karma sannyasa. The next work may be something else, or it could be self-enquiry. At that time, automatically the karma sannyasa is there. If you take self-enquiry as a karma, the other karmas, when the thought of them comes, we cut them off directly. When doing other karmas, having taken up, one should see that the mind is going towards, I would have been better off doing this or doing that, cut it off, including thought of self-enquiry. From karma sannyasa, Ishwararpitam, Nechaya Kritam, Chitta Shodakam, Mukti Sadakam, Kaya Vangmana. While discussing Kaya Vangmana, Karya Muttamam, we find that in the Atma Swarupa, there is no break as subject and object. The Atma Swarupa is Akanta Atma Swarupa, is the Akanta Spurana of I. It is continuous. Whereas the Kaya is gross, Vak is a little bit of mixture between gross and subtle, and the Manaschintanam is the subtlest sadhana possible out of the three. Therefore, the gross, seeing that definitely that person is different from me, I am different from that person. Clearly, the sight, the Kaya, it differentiates. So, it is, if to directly try to bring the subtlest here, Bhagavan says in spiritual instructions, is like trying to stitch silk garment with crowbar. With a huge crowbar used to break land, you use that to stitch a fine silken robe. Is it possible? Therefore, the sadhana with Kayaka is going to have a lot of gaps. You can easily see that what we would have done in our young age. We would have studied the books that are to be studied with a loud voice so that the parents will know in the other room. But when we are reading aloud, the mind would have wandered away somewhere. Similar is the chanting of the Vishnu Sahasranamam, which one of my seniors from my early days, he was one of my bosses. He would say, Nandakumar, you are saying you hold the mind, you hold Atma Vicharam. But I am chanting Vishnu Sahasranamam every day. I find myself in 100th Nama. Suddenly I have gone into my glorious working days. Suddenly I find myself in the 200th Nama. That means when I am using the gross sound, the mind which is subtle can escape. The gross sadhana can be discontinuous. So, Kaya, Van, Manaha, Karya Uttamam, Pujanam Japa, Stintanam Kramat. Now, how to make one who still wants support from the Acharya, from Bhagavan, with the Kaya sadhana, with these tools? I am clearly seeing that the world is filled with these objects. I love you greatly, O Acharya, but definitely the government is so powerful. The other forces to which I am subject to are also powerful. How can I think of myself as the consciousness permeating them all? Please tell me a way to have upasana, to worship you, and come to the Dakshinamurthy Swami, the Acharya, in his compassion tells that Puramba Sanalo Nilo Aharnato Himamshu Puma. That is, Bhu is known as the earth. Ambamsi is water. Analo, Analaha. Analaha is fire. The earth, water, fire. They say Analaha, the fire gets its name because it says Alaha, Alaha. That is not satisfied, not enough, not enough. The fire, whatever you put in it, it consumes. So the inside comparison for fire, inside us, it is the desire. If you allow the desire to have better and better objects to be consumed, Bhagavan says it is like pouring ghee on fire and trying to put it off. The desire will only consume that new one and ask for more. So Analaha, Anilaha. Anilaha is the air. And the Ambaram, Chidambaram. The Ambaram is the space. Ambaram. And Aharnataha. Aharnataha is, Ahar is the day, Nataha is, Aharnataha, you can take it as the, obviously, without whom the day cannot exist, is the sun. Himamshu, Himamshu is the moon. Puman is to be taken as all the living beings, the individual, all the living beings, all these 8, the 5 elements, the sun, the moon, and the living being. Put together all the combination. Whatever you see as combination of this, characharatmakam idam yasyaiva murtyashtakam. All these put together in various combinations are nothing but forms of one Ishvara. That is the worship given to us. What is the best form of worship? That Bhagavan says that Ishwararpitam Nechayakritam Chittashodakam Mukti Sadakam Kayavangmana Karyamuttamam Pujanam Japas Chintanam Krama Jagata Ishadi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Brut Deva Pujanam. All the Ashtamurtis, in whatever combinations you get to interact with, are all only the Ishvara's body, the Ishvara's form. Now, what the great Acharya and Bhagavan have done for us, they have taken the gross, which is, you can go back to the reading loud and chanting loud of the Sahasranama, how the mind escapes. With such an instrument, how to make the puja continuous, how to make the puja have an indicative presence, at least as the Atma does. As the Atma is continuous, can we have continuous puja? This morning, we were meditating on the second Mangala Shlokam in Ulladanarpada. The second Mangala Shlokam is about Marana Bhaya Mikulavam Makkalaranaha Marana Bhavamilla Maheshan Charaname Sarvartam Sarvadudan Sautrar Savendam Sarvaro Savadavar Nittar. There, while telling about the Maranam, all of us have some investigation into Maranam at some time or the other. Somebody would have passed away, but the commentator says our fear of Maranam is very fleeting. Is very fleeting because the moment we leave the crematorium, come to the road and find a restaurant, he says you will forget about meditating on what is death. So the meditation on death is discontinuous. How to make that continuous is a whole branch of meditation. How to make the meditation on death as continuous. But Bhagavan helps us to do that meditation continuously from his enlightenment experience. And unless the meditation is continuous, unless the puja is continuous, it will not be akin to the spirit that permeates everything. Now, how to make meditation on death continuous? How does Bhagavan help us? Bhagavan says, when the fear of death came upon him, it drove his mind inward. And he did not ask only about the bodily death. his inquiry into death did not stop at the bodily level. His inquiry went on to what is it that dies in me? And I found that the body dies. Because he had seen his father's passing away and understood that that is not his father. What he was calling as father has moved out of the body. Therefore, he stiffens the body. And he says the breath too is subject to birth and death. It has the inward life and outward. At that outward point, there is death. So he holds the breath. And he says the moment he held the breath, the mind also completely became still with no other thoughts and no I thought also arising. So he has inquired into the totality of all possible mortal things and stilled all of them. Now that the body has been stilled, the prana has been stilled, the manas and ego have been stilled, am I dead? That is when the Ishvara, the deathless spirit, the Arunachala Shiva as existence consciousness, rises and shines as I. And Bhagavan identifies with that deathless spirit. Unless the puja is continuous like this, unless the puja covers everything, it will not be able to get to the deathless spirit that is underlying everything. So to make the puja as continuous, the great ones, Acharya and Bhagavan, give us this simple method that treat whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you touch, whatever you taste, whatever you smell, all of that are all only the forms of Ishvara. Whatever you think of, whatever you breathe in, whatever you intellectualize, whatever you see as persona, are all of Ishvara's form. Whether the gross world or the subtle world are all only forms of whom? Forms of Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam. All these are only forms of Ishvara. So, Jagata Ishati Yukta Sevanam, Ashtamurti Brut, all the Ashtamurtis and their combinations as gross and subtle bodies are all only Ishvara. We practice this in the Girivalam once we were discussing the verses of Upadesha Saram. We took just 10 verses for each Girivalam, and the Girivalams happened over a period of maybe 2-3 months. Each Girivalam we did the meditation on 10 verses of Upadesha Saram. And in the first Girivalam, obviously, we took up this particular verse, that Jagata Ishadi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Brut Deva Pujan. Now, if all the gross things that we are seeing, the road, the lamppost, the cow, the tea shop, everything is only the Ishvara. And the subtle, whatever you can think of as the objects of thought or even the persona, all of them are only Arunachala. What are we left with? We asked each other. So we all came to the conclusion that if everything is Ishvara, then there is only one thought that I can hold. That there is only one thought I can hold as puja. That as puja, I have to call all these as Arunachala. So what we did from there for about so many minutes, I don't remember how many minutes, we just applied that Ashtamurti Brit Deva Pujanam. If we apply it in life, what happens to us at that time? We could come to this point that we will end up calling it as the Arunachala Swarupa. Later on, much later in our discussions, we could come to the point that that how can there be anything other than the I? If everything is Ishvara, then all of that should have only one nama, which is the I, the Aham nama. The Ishvara will be calling everything as Aham, isn't it? So we came to that much later, but in our first Girivalam, we came up to this point, that what is it to have worship of Ashtamurti Brut Deva Pujanam, and what is the Acharya giving here which commentators have hesitated to call it as Jnana Marga, but it is very much Jnana Marga, because what is Jnana Marga and Bhakti Marga put together in the most beautiful way possible, because the Upasana has been made continuous, even though the perception has remained gross. The eyes can see everything, but whatever you are seeing, what it is all whatever you can think of, whatever personas are there. That means you just change the many thoughts into one, many personas into one. Therefore, you are left with only one thought of upasana, one thought of worship. Therefore, Arunachala. So you automatically come to Japam. We decided that day that if you really apply that verse, that Jagata Ishadi Yukta Sevanam, Ashtamurti Brud Deva Pujanam, you will automatically come to learn the importance of Japam. And in Japam, Uttamastava, more than praising that Ishvara, Uchamandataha, Chittajam Japa, Dhyanam Uttapam, that do the Japam inside itself. Ajadaraya Srotasasamam, let that Japam become Dhyanam, and that Dhyanam be continuous. And Ajadaraya Srotasasamam, Sarala Chintanam, Virala Tatparam, Veda Bhavana Soham Intyaso. If Ashtamurti Brudeva Pujanam, if everything is, then is not the one I within. That alone is that Veda Bhavana Soham Ityasam. Bhavana Bida Bhavani Mata. How in Tamil it comes is Nei Virchi Pol, Vitida Dundale Undi Para, Visedama Munave Undi Para, Aniya Bhavatil, Avanahamakum, Ananiya Bhavame Undi Para. That is, when you have Ashtamurti Brudeva Pujanam, you go directly to the eye of Ishvara. And how is the eye of Ishvara? Avanahamahum Ananiya Bhavame. What is that? He cannot say me and something else, because all are his form. Though we begin as the student of Bhagavan and the disciple of Bhagavan and disciple of Acharya, where are they taking us? They are taking us to the Atma of Ishvara. That is, they are taking us from the puja, Ashtamurti Brudeva Pujanam, to what does this naturally mean? It means that there is only Ekachintana, and that Ekachintana also need not be Aniya Bhavam. It can be the Ananiya Bhavam of Ishvara itself. Avanahamaham. If you have doubt whether in Upadesha Saram he is saying that Ishvara's eye is Ananya, you can go to Aksharamanamale and see that the term Meyaham, that Arunachala's Meyaham is used at least in 4 places or 5 places. Meyaham means the Ishvara's Aham is the true self. It does not know anything Anyam. The Ishvara's self, there is a talk given by Ujjwalji, I think yesterday, that what is Anyam? What is really Anya? Is there anything other? When Bhagavan is asked how to serve the world, how to your path seems to be very selfish. How are you going to explain that you are of any use to the world? Bhagavan would respond, where is the other for me to go and feel that I have served somebody? There is only the I. There is only the Ishwaras. All the Ashtamurti are only the I. And that is where we are coming. Manpunal, Analkalvanam, Madi Kadir, Vonduvanam. This Madi and Kadir, we can take in another way. An interesting way is that the star, sun, it represents the self-generating energy, all energy-giving objects. And the moon represents the users of energy, the planet as well as the sun. The sun burns itself. There is a process by which it burns itself in the thermonuclear fusion and is a creator of energy. So all creators of energy, all users of energy are covered by sun and moon. You can take it as that. And of course, the individual who is the perceiver of all these things, we can take as the Ashtamurti. all that are only the form of yasyaiva characharam, all the moving and non-moving beings of the earth are all only the Murti Ashtakam, the forms of Dakshinamurthy Swami. So where do we come from there? There is only one thought of worship. And that too from Anya Bhavam, we come to the Ananya Bhavam of Ishvara. So we come to the the first verse on Ishvara, that which permeates everything. From Puja, the Acharya brings us to that which permeates everything. So there is nothing non-jnana in this. The call on the Sishya is to think. And how is he to think? Enduvar kirai niraindor. You have to meditate on this. You have to meditate as to what happens when you understand that everything is Ishvara Swarupa. In fact, the Jnani too has an understanding of this. Lakshman Sharma ji in the Paravidya Upanishad, Ramana Paravidya Upanishad, I think, in that he keeps mentioning, he has this peculiar feeling that the Jnani has a duty to come back and teach. So the author of that Upanishad, the Sanskrit shlokas, Lakshman Sharma ji, he has this strong feeling that the Jnani has to come back and teach in the world. Now, how can he teach in the world without these understandings? He narrates some qualities of the Jnani in the Upanishad. But if you consider or take Lakshman Sharma ji seriously, then the Jnani, when he comes into this world to teach, he can be said to have this understanding that everything is Ishvara Swarupam only. That everything, that is how the easy, gentle getting back to the Atma of Ishvara is natural for the Jnani. He has not come out anywhere. He has not come into any other thing. It is all his Swarupa only. Because the Jnani has identified with the Mayaham of Ishvara, it is his body. How we have identified with our body and we call every part and parcel of it as I only. The Jiva has permeated the body. The Ishvara has permeated the entire cosmos. Pindam meviya nadane, Brahmandam meviya nadana. The Jiva, Parama or Ishvara Aikyatvam is taught in Ramana Sadguru by saying there is only one spirit. There is no one spirit which just permeates up to the tip of the fingers, edge of the eyes, and that is called Jiva, and some other spirit permeates the whole creation. No, if you turn inward and worship all the Ashtamurtis as Ishvara only, where is the need to go outside? Where is the need to use the senses and go outside? What is it all? It is all only Ishvara Swarupam. Where is the need to taste something and say this taste is different from that taste? It is all Ishvara Swarupam. Doesn't mean then we will become living without common sense. Common sense is also Ishvara Swarupam. So that is where Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's episode as to not listening to the Mahut is there. That somebody learns Advaita from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and on the road he meets an elephant that is running, and it is running not in control of the Mahut, and the Mahut is shouting, "Get out of the way, get out of the way." And he just remembers the Advaita teaching in the most ignorant way and continues to stand in front of the elephant. Fortunately, he is left with bruises and lives to come back to the Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and asks, why? If it is Advaita, then I should not have been hurt. Then Paramahamsa says, the Mahut on top shouting, "Get out of the way, get out of the way," that is also Advaita. You are moving using common sense in this dimension is also Advaita. Ashtamurti Brud Deva Pujanam means doesn't mean that you now have special ability to extract different things from the Ashtamurti. It is just that you are able to drop this whole dimension as made of the same stuff. There is a shlokam which Paramacharya and he would quote from Tirumandiram. and that same verse is quoted in Ulladhanarpadu commentary also. Marathai maraitadu Mamadayane, Marathil maraindadu Mamadayane, Parathai maraitadu Parmudal Budam, Parathil maraindadu Parmudal Budame. That is, in the wooden elephant, if you see the elephant and the details and the beauty or the akrosha that is there in the image created, you forget that it is all wood. So Marathai, the substance with which it is made, is blocked by the elephant. The moment you say it is wood, just like the other objects in that museum, that elephant is also made of wood only. Marathil maraindadu Mamadayane, Parathai maraindadu Parmudal Budam. If you take the Ashtamurtis to be separate things, creating separate objects, then those separate Panchabhutas with the Surya, Chandra and the Puman, they will create separate images. Whereas if you understand that they are all made of the Ishvara's spirit only, then all the Panchabhutas, Surya, Chandra and the Puman and the combinations they have, they all get Parathil Maraindadu Parmudal Budam. If this is all the form of Ishvara, then they are all now permeated by that one spirit of I. So there is a dramatic jump from the continuous puja to the Atma without any resting in the Sukshma Swarupa. And Bhagavan's teachings in the day by day to Devaraj Mudaliyar, don't seek the body of Ishvara, don't seek the mind of Ishvara, but seek only the Mayaham of Ishvara, is carried out in this verse by teaching that whatever you perceive in the sensory world, whatever you perceive in the mind, whatever you perceive as personas, are all only Dakshinamurthy Swami, who is the Atma Swarupa. So come to Ananya Bhakti directly. Call everything as Dakshinamurthy Swami, everything as the Atma Swarupa. This is Ennuvar Kirai Niraindon. Like this, with Guru's Kripa, when we understand that whatever is there is only the self, is only the I, then that I permeates everything. Irai Niraindon. The Atma Swarupa permeates everything. From what appears to be gross puja, without saying that the gross is incapable of coming to the subtle, that there is a krama, that from gross you have to come to subtle and then from subtle to Ananya. The Acharya takes a leap that think through that what else can be there? It is all Ishvara only. It is all his form only. Therefore, it is all permeated by one spirit. Call it as I. Call it as I. Ennuvar Irai Niraindon. The moment one falls at the feet of the Guru and having recognized his inability to see the all-permeating one which permeates all the avasthas, the one which is connecting as relationships and permeates everything, I am unable to see, I am still seeing gross forms. The Guru says all these gross forms are only Ishvara Swarupa. And the moment you understand, there is nothing to go outward, there is nothing to think of. Immediately there is a turning inward which is dramatically swift, and one is able to hold the I. The Aham Nama Japam. The Aham Nama Japam becomes natural. The Arunachala Nama Japam or Aham Nama Japam, what Bhagavan says to Mrs. Kanna. Mrs. Kanna says, I am a samsari. Just like the one who has brought out this verse from the Acharya. Mrs. Kanna says to Bhagavan, I am a total samsari. I am having so many children. I have to take care of my husband. I have to cook all through the morning. Get ready for them. I am so engaged in the physical world. How can I ever do self-enquiry or come to the path you are saying? Bhagavan says, has your I left anywhere? Keep saying I. The cooking is I, the fire is I, the milk is I, the sun is I, the father is I, the socks is I, the shirt is I. Never leave the I. Everything is you only. Everything is you only. Why do you call yourself as somebody engaged in household work, taking care of husband? Husband is I, serving is I. Do this aham nama japam. So, from a simple person who feels completely enveloped by the karma, enveloped by the world, Bhagavan directly brings her to holding that spirit which permeates everything. Where is the source? Seshadri Swamigal says to his Sishya, who says, that buffalo is standing near, please come this side. And Seshadri Swamigal says, buffalo. Why do you call it buffalo? Their immersion in the self is so much, they won't allow you to call any object as object. That they would stop calling them as objects, start calling them, holding them as the I. Where else can they take us? Ennuvar kirai niraindon. Evanin anniyam satrendram. There is no anniya for such a one. There is no other to think of. There is only the I. From the Murti worship, Murti Ashtakam, directly coming to the I which has no Anyam. Who can give this blessing except the great ones? That to the one who says, I am a householder, I am seeing that from morning till evening, I am engrossed with forms who are all commanding me. The children are commanding me, the husband is commanding me. What am I to do? There comes Acharya, there comes Bhagavan and says, whatever your hands may be doing, whatever, don't you don't need to stop. Has your eye gone anywhere? Keep saying, I. Everything is filled with that spirit. Ennuvar kirai niraindon, evanin anniyam satrendram, tandarul guruvam. This is the coolest thing. All friction, all heat generation, all second law of thermodynamics, all entropy is gone. There is no time which is going to erode things. There is no time which is going to bring an end to things. There is only the Tan Arul. There is only the cool grace which permeates everything as I. That Arul Niraivu, Arul Niraivana Amudakada. The I is the Amudam. It is the fullness of love. It is the fullness of grace. At the same time, it is the fullness of jnana. When one inquires, for whom is this unconditional love? For whom is this spurana? That fire of I, that unconditional love of I, also quietens into the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Can we sit in Atmacharam till 8 o'clock only? Ujjalji, is that possible? Thank you.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to the self. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining is the self in all beings. When we say this itself, shining as a self in all beings, we are looking at the Ashtamurti Deva Pujanam. And in Aksharamana, Bhagavan says this experience, this shloka is the coolness. He ends this shloka with Tan Arul, Tan Uru, the coolness of this form or this worship of Dakshinamurthy, of the self as Dakshinamurthy. In Aksharamana, he says, Chittam Kulira Kadir Astam Vaitu Amudavayai Tira Arulmadi. There he calls it as the moon, Arulmadi, Chittam Kulira and Amudavayai Tira. Again in Arunachala Pancharattam, in the very first verse, Bhagavan says, Amudakadal. He talks of Arunachala as Amudakadal, the blissful form. That is also referred to as something which is cool, as against the heat of the mind, the heat of the division. And while talking of the 5 elements today, Nandakumarji described that Analaha, the fire, which is never satisfied or which can keep on eating, which is a bottomless pit. The other bottomless pit is the ego, says Bhagavan, which has no form. In Ulladanarpada, he says it has no form, so it is constantly feeding on forms. When it is constantly feeding on forms, what is the counter or what is the way to counter this hunger of the ego for forms? How to satiate it? Now here, when we are told that all are only the form of the Supreme One, everything, there is no demarcation. Again, Nandakumarji took us to the experience of his Girivalam, where they were meditating upon the Ashtamurti Brit, and then they came up to the point that all have the same Nama, and then later in the meditations, they came up to the point where there is no demarcation in the forms. Now, in the previous verse also, we were looking at the absence of demarcations, where we saw that all the examples which were given of golden ornaments and clay and the pot and light and all that is shown, images of light. That was the point of meditation we had come up to. But we are saying that we are seeing the multiplicity. What are we to do? And so the Acharya and Bhagavan, they are telling us that all this is only the form of the Lord. So when we stop seeing things as apart, or when we are into the sadhana of seeing everything as the Supreme, then what happens? The demarcations or the divisions of forms, the multiplicity of forms falls away. Then what is the ego to feed on? When there is lack of multiplicity, when other is not there, when numbers are not there, the ego has to become silent. Its hunger what will it do? It doesn't have many things to eat. It doesn't have many things to consume. It doesn't have many forms to consume. The two ways are there of actually of silencing the mind. One is to question its very nature through self-inquiry and get back to its source. The other way is to cut away at multiplicity, cut the multiplicity. Now, how to cut multiplicity? One is by cutting away all objects by focusing attention on any single object by Eka Chintana. In Upadesha Saram, Bhagavan tells us Eka Chintana Nashametyadaha. That Eka Chintana Nashametyadaha is again interpreted in two ways. Either you focus on one thing or focus on that which is only one. Now, here in this verse, we are told that we can focus on that which is only one by understanding that all the forms, everything that we see, the multiplicity is all reduced to only one. Only one. So, where is the question of moving? What is this mind? The mind is movement. Again in Upadesha Sara, Bhagavan says, Vrittayo manaha. The manas consists of vrittis. What is a vritti? The very definition or the meaning of the term vritti is that which moves. When there is an absence of the second, where is the possibility of movement? To what will the mind move? If there is duality, the mind can move. When the moment there is a second object, the moment there is something apart from the one, the mind can move to that. It moves to that, and then from that it makes it multiplicity. But if it is reduced to the singular, either by removal of objects, by cutting away all objects and what is called stilling of the mind or silencing of the mind, or by bringing it to Eka Chintana, automatically that Chintana has to dissolve after some time because the very nature of the mind is denied. So that is the sadhana here when we cut away the multiplicity of seeing things as things. And when we start the sadhana of seeing things as everything as Ishvara, then there is nothing further, no work for the mind to do beyond that. And it will come to a point of silence, at which point it can be turned back to its source. Bhagavan says in Ramana Gita that such a silence which we arrive at through dhyana of any kind is an unconscious silence. In the sense, it is unconscious that that very silence is the self. However, when we do self-inquiry, we become aware immediately that that very silence is the self. Until then, what happens is that the silence may be experienced as, when the self it may be experienced, but one is not aware of it as the very self. It may remain as an experience. It may come and go, which happens even in Nirvikalpa. In Nirvikalpa, the self is experienced. But what happens when one comes out of the Nirvikalpa? One believes, I had an experience of Nirvikalpa. So what happens is that the self does not become the Adhara. The identity still remains in a very subtle form to experience the Adhara. But that is the penultimate, it may be seen as a penultimate stage, or if that is held continuously, like Nandakumar says, if one holds the Hams Purana continuously without asking anything of it, if one remains in that point where everything is only the self, then automatically the merge will get back, the mind will get back to its source. Now, This point of seeing the Ashtamurti Dhrit Deva Pujanam can be to the external world or it can be to thoughts internally. Very often, repeatedly in our sadhana through these classes, Nandakumarji takes us to the point of not discriminating between the good and the bad, not having the likes and the dislikes, not dividing experiences into good and bad, right and wrong. So, there, instead of many, instead of the Ashtamurti, the Murtis are divided into two kinds. One is good and the other is bad. One is likable, the other is dislikable. So, here the Murtis are divided into 8 types. But whatever be the division, the goal is to unify, to make it all one. So, within our mind also, there are so many kinds of thoughts. There are, if you look at it, there are thoughts which are like the 5 elements. There are thoughts which are like water. There are thoughts which are like fire. There are thoughts which are like air. There are thoughts which are little gross like the earth. There are thoughts which are very, very, very subtle like ether. There are thoughts which are bright. There are thoughts which are cool. And there are thoughts which seem to be vibrant with the living of the living beings. Now, all these multiplicity of thoughts which keep us engaged in their apparent variety, if we say all this is only Ishvara, all this is only the light of the self, where is there any variety in any of the thoughts or the images that we are seeing? They are all only Ishvara Swarupa, they're only Atma Swarupa, there's nothing but the light of the self. Then the manas comes to all the thoughts come to Ekagrata over there. And one gets back to the source. And Nandakumarji also today meditated for our sake upon the death experience of Bhagavan, the meditation on death also. And the meditation on death, what is that? That meditation is ultimately the meditation on transience, that everything is subject to death, everything disappears. And so if we take refuge in the deathless one, then only can we experience the truth. How do we take refuge in the deathless one? Whenever anything that is time-bound arises, if we recognize that pursuing that which is time-bound will bind us to time, will make us also time-bound. If we pursue a thought, then we will also become time-bound. We become bound to the identity which is pursuing thought. So, that is surrender that thought through inquiry back to the source. Let us ask for whom and surrender it. So, whether it is the understanding of transience and therefore we want to get back, or understanding the glory of that infinite being, what is there to be attached to or pursuing any of these puny forms which are transient and which have no existence apart from the self. Understanding that glory also, one may turn back by the infinite grace of the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana to all.
Namo